please stop me at any point if you have some questions. I'm going to talk about Vagrant and Laravel, how to supercharge your local development environment. I myself started adopting and using Vagrant for local development a little bit earlier this year, probably this summer or something, and I've been using it pretty extensively, and recently I've been working a lot with trying to make it work work specifically for Laravel projects. So I'm going to start out with talking a little bit about that. So first of all, what does local development environment mean? What do I actually mean? So I want to start asking a little question. What does your current development environment look like? I just have some examples here. So I used to use a setup with SAMP or MAMP on my local computer, running a web server or with a database, so I can just work a local host. That's an option that many people use. There's also an option of just working directly off a server, like editing stuff on the FTP or uploading stuff all the time. So what do you guys use? What do you usually prefer, or what do you work with?
We use Homebrew to download all the stuff we need, so I guess that would be the install.
So a bit kind of like the same, yeah?
Yes, MAMP.
MAMP, yeah.
Mostly external server. We sync on every save. I sync to the remote server, and we run everything on a remote server.
Cool. That sounds like a good approach too. So what I'm going to introduce to you guys, it sounds like, does anybody have experience with Vagrant yet?
I installed it and once. I did install it once and ran it. It looks cool, but.
Good. That's perfect audience, I guess. Because then I want to present the third option is it's using a virtual machine and using Vagrant to use a virtual machine. So that's what I'm going to cover here and trying to connect that to Laravel. So first of all, what is Vagrant? You know now that it's like a tool on the same set of MAMP uploading to a server. It's like the same level in your environment. This is a quote from the front page of vagrantup.com. This is the website of Vagrant. Vagrant helps you create and configure lightweight, reproducible, and portable development environments. That's pretty condensed, and what does that even mean? So Vagrant is a system to easily create a virtual machine specifically using a configuration file. So if you try to run Vagrant on multiple computers, let's say you have multiple developers, they will be able to create the exact same virtual machine. Having your development environment be the same as your coworker next to you is usually a pretty good idea. This is what Vagrant essentially is trying to do. Recently, Vagrant released some new versions that does many more things than this, but I just want to focus on the core idea behind Vagrant. So I talked about the fact Vagrant makes a virtual machine. That's what it creates. So what is the problem with using, a local environment, for example, with Homebrew or MAMP or stuff like that? Well, when you work with Laravel, you could actually potentially need to use a lot of software. This is actually a list that's based off what Taylor Otwell, the guy who created Laravel, what he wants to see in his local development environment. So it can be quite a hassle to install all that in your local laptop. I mean, it'll be fine. It'll take a few hours, and you have everything installed and set up in your local machine. The problem is now your coworker needs to do the same, and you should preferably have the same configuration. Memcache should run the same part. MySQL should have the same credentials. That's kind of difficult when using a local setup like that. Working with a remote server, this is easy because everything is already installed on the remote server. Problem with the remote server is the whole syncing stuff to the remote server part, and you can't really work without internet, stuff like that. So that's where Vagrant comes in between. So yeah, we have a look at all the software we would like to have installed. So how does Vagrant come in and do all these things? Well, Vagrant is like a thin tool that works with a lot of other software. Vagrant doesn't do all the magic by itself. But let's take a look of look on the flow that Vagrant operates in. First of all, you'll have a Vagrant file. A Vagrant file is a configuration file where you specify what your virtual machines look like, which kind of how it should be configured. This is the main entry point to operating Vagrant. Vagrant is written in Ruby, and the Vagrant file uses Ruby syntax to a certain extent, so you'll actually be able to write Ruby code in it if you want to do something more complicated than just the default setup. So Vagrant works with three main things, I will say. It works with providers, parishioners, and plugins. The next slide, I have some examples of what that could be. But in my case, this is my useful environment. My provider will be VirtualBox, which is software to create a virtual machine. It's open source, which means it's free, and it works pretty damn well, I would say. Parishioner works from the specifications in the Vagrant file to modify the virtual machine, the actual computer, and provision it, meaning installing the right software that you want to have. We just looked at a list of software. It was like PHP, MySQL, whatever you need. Plugins is obviously stuff that extends Vagrant, and it like helps doing additional stuff. And I have two plugins that I usually use my flow. That's a lot of different plugins out there you want to use maybe. So here's a list of like different providers, provisioners, and plugins. So for providers, I was saying how I'm using VirtualBox. You can also use VMware Fusion, which is basically a commercial version of VirtualBox. You can say it does basically exactly the same, which is a commercial product from VMware. I think it's a little bit faster, a little bit snappier, starting your box, doing all operations. You can also, so the new thing is you can actually not only use a virtual machine, but you actually use Vagrant to provision a server. For example, you can get a plugin that works with Amazon AWS and launches a server on the cloud, or a Rackspace, launches a server there with the exact same configuration. So if you rewind back a little bit, I was talking about how it's awesome that you have the same setup as your coworker. So not only would it be awesome to have the same setup as your coworker, it would also be awesome if your staging and production environment was the same as your development environment. And this is where virtual machine shines, because you can actually have basically one-to-one environment for your local development environment, staging, production, or testing, or whatever you have in different environments. So you can like launch a virtual machine with VirtualBox, then deploy it to Amazon AWS afterwards, and have a development and a production environment that's exactly the same, using the same scripts. All right, so provisioners.
Can I just
Yeah, sure.
Does it matter what like if you were using Mac OS 10 in development and you wanted to use a Linux distribution for production, does it matter?
No, so that's a cool thing. When you install a virtual machine on your local computer, you will install it with an operating system. Vagrant per default has some nice images for using Ubuntu. It's pretty common Ubuntu Linux. What you want to do is have the same image as a base for your local virtual machine and also your production server.
Okay.
That's actually a good question because it relates a little bit to provisioners, which we're talking about now. So it comes with a base image, which means it's just a basic installation of whatever operating system you want. You can build your own images, but like a default one is Ubuntu. It doesn't come installed with any software, so you need some kind of way to install software. A simple way will just be to use a shell script or like bash script to run a simple command like apt-get install this and this, and it will work on Ubuntu and install stuff. But as you saw before, we have a huge list of software, and we want to do a lot of things to configure it, set the right passwords and whatnot. So usually use some kind of software. There's a ton of different software that does this. In the old days, before Vagrant, this kind of software was used to provision actual production servers, mostly. So if you have a Facebook, you have 1,000 servers. You don't want to go in and like set up a server manually. You will have some kind of provisioner and install software. So Chef, Puppet, Salt, Ansible is also one. they all do the same basically. They just have different ways of doing it. I personally use Chef, so I'm gonna use that as an example for the next kind of things here. Plugins. So this is Vagrant plugins. Bookshelf, Librarian, Host Manager, Omnibus is some commonly used plugins. I personally use Bookshelf and Host Manager, and I will come back to what they do and why I use them. So let's dive into the Vagrant file. Remember, the Vagrant file is the configuration file for Vagrant. It tells what the virtual machine should do. So this is a minimal Vagrant file with only like the most important things in it. You'll see that the Vagrant file I usually use is probably around 100 lines or something. So this is just a minimal example. So, do you have a question or no? First, I define what kind of box. This is the base box, the base virtual machine image. Vagrant has Precise 32. That's the Ubuntu Precise. That's the version of Ubuntu. That's like a really common default one to use because, yeah, they can recommend that. Define a name for it and define where it can be downloaded in case the user doesn't have it installed on their local machine. You can build your own image. You can potentially have an image with everything installed already, but the cool thing about having a provisioner is it makes it much easier to deploy the same software to multiple servers, maybe with a different operating system or a newer version of operating system or stuff like that. You basically write code that installs stuff. Synced folder. This one will sync the current folder, whatever folder the Vagrant file is put in. So locally it will be the current folder / and remotely on the guest, which will be the Vagrant box, the virtual machine, it will mount it to /var/www. So the current folder on your local machine will be the same as /var/www on the virtual machine.
Real quick.
Sure.
I don't know if maybe your question was confusing to me at first, but the virtual machine, if your production server is Linux, you would want the virtual machine to also be Linux, but you can run it on the virtual machine on the Mac, and it's syncing.
Yeah, you can potentially run Windows or whatever. The virtual machine will be the same.
So I can still do my editing and stuff on the Mac.
Right, you're editing it, and then but when you run your code, you're just viewing it through a VM, and that launches the browser.
So the cool thing about a synced folder, it means you can edit files locally on your machine using your own inter. You have to upload it anywhere. It will flake directly on the virtual machine.
And view it in the browser on your own. Just not on the virtual machine.
So I'll give a demo afterwards, so you can see how it all works together. I just want to introduce you to the concepts.
Yes.
I hope it makes more sense when I actually show it.
Yeah.
This is a simple provisioner. It just runs apt-get install, PHP, MySQL Server. This is how you can do it in a real simple way, but usually we use an actual provisioner. So I was saying how I'm using Chef. Chef is made by a company called Upscode, and I actually happen to know that Facebook uses Chef to provision their thousands of servers, so that's a pretty good credibility for them. That if Facebook uses them, I can probably use them too. But like the other software out there is great as well. That's like nothing. No reason you should absolutely use Chef. The Chef provisioner works with a concept called cookbooks. I love like the terms they use. They actually call it cookbooks. And let me show you an example of different cookbooks. So you will usually have a cookbook for each piece of software you want to install. And I want to introduce you to 3 different types of cookbooks. It's just good to know the difference. Official cookbooks. So Upscode, who made Chef, has built probably 100 cookbooks or something for all the common software that a lot of people use. They have an Apache 2 cookbook, an apt cookbook, PHP, MySQL, blah blah blah. What the cookbook does, it's a Ruby, it's a series of Ruby files, Ruby scripts that installs the software and usually supports all common platforms. It actually works with Windows as a server as well, most of the stuff, which is kind of cool. If you're into that. And it allows you also to configure stuff. So I want to install MySQL, but I want to define what the root password should be, for example. The cookbook, make sure to install it and configure it after your specifications. Yeah, this is great. It happens to be that some software you need doesn't have an official cookbook from Xcode. Or maybe the official cookbook from Xcode doesn't really do exactly what you want to do, like it's not flexible enough maybe. So of course there's a sort of third-party cookbooks out there. A cookbook there's usually just one cookbook in one Git repository. So here's an example of some cookbooks that I use, which are third-party cookbooks made by third-party developers. Redis, Beanstalk, NPM, Beanstalk Console are some good examples. And the third kind of cookbook is what you will usually call a side cookbook or local cookbook. This is a cookbook usually created for your project or your like type of project, in this case Laravel, and it kind of binds things together. Like Apache defines a nice little function that allows you to create a virtual host for Apache. And then I can use my side cookbook over here to create the virtual host using the function that this module provides, or this cookbook provides, sorry. The cookbook module. So I created a Laravel cookbook that's specific for this type of projects, binding things together. Cookbook consists of recipes. See where it's going? And recipes is just a way of grouping subtasks under a cookbook. So I have a recipe that handles the vhost, which means creating the virtual host with Apache, so the domain name works. I have another one that creates a custom database user, so we not only have a root account, but also like a normal user account for security reasons. It creates the MySQL database as well if using MySQL. Installs some additional packages we need, like Git, curl, vim, stuff like that. Then we have another recipe that installs web server packages, which means this is leading up to something. I built a Laravel template for using Vagrant. That's why I'm mentioning this. And this particular template uses PHP 5.5, which requires me to add some additional repositories and install a custom Ubuntu PPA and configure PHP 5.5. So this is what the last recipe does. So this is kind of like a overview of the cookbooks. So, as I mentioned, a cookbook is basically just a folder with Ruby files in a specific structure. And usually you have one Git repository, a GitHub repository, for each cookbook. So, in the old days, I used to, well, I haven't been using this for a long time, but a few months ago, I used to just download the cookbooks and put them in my project folder. But it kind of feels like it's flooding your folder, your project folder with all this extra stuff. Like your Laravel project. You don't want to have all this extra stuff. And it's kind of difficult to manage. You wish there was a software that can manage it for you. And ta-da! There's a software to manage it for you. It's called Bergshelf. Bergshelf works really well with Vagrant. There's a Bergshelf plugin for Vagrant that makes everything happen automatically. So what you do, you have your Vagrant file, but you also create another file called the Bergs file. Bergs file is just a list of cookbooks that Bergshelf should download, and that should be available to Vagrant and Chef. So here's an example of a really minimal Bergs file. First, you want to have a line that says side opscode, which means if I haven't specified a location for the cookbook, just use the official opscode repository. So for the first 3 cookbooks here, I just say cookbook PHP, cookbook memcache, cookbook MySQL, and Bergshelf knows that you should just download it from the official opscode repository.
You know if there's something comparable for Puppet?
I haven't really used Puppet, so I don't really know, but I'm sure there is. I hope there is, else you have to build it. So you can actually see here that these 3 is official cookbooks. These 3 are third-party cookbooks. I specified the Git repository, you can find them. The last one is a site-specific cookbook or local cookbook, so I just say it's in the side cookbooks folder. This is the best practice syntax to use for the folder name, and you'll have it locally. Before I give the demo, I just want to show how actually to operate this Vagrant thing. So we have a slide here. So Vagrant works command line. It doesn't really have a complicated syntax with all kinds of parameters. It uses straightforward. You type Vagrant space whatever you want to do with Vagrant. So the most common one you want to start using for the first time is Vagrant space up. You type in the terminal. First you go to the directory of your project. You type Vagrant up. Then Vagrant will, in VirtualBox or VMware, whatever you're using, it will create the virtual machine after these specifications, and then it will run all the provisioners. You can have multiple provisioners actually. If this is the first time you are running Vagrant up, it will first check if you have the base image for the virtual machine. So in this case we used Ubuntu. Then it will download it locally on your machine if you don't have it already. After that, it'll wait until the virtual machine is fully booted, and then it will run all provisions. So the first time you run it, it will take 15 minutes probably. The next time, so actually, let's take the next one. Vagrant suspend. This makes the VirtualBox sleep, which means it's not using any memory anymore. It's not using any resource on your computer. It'll just use your hard drive space. You have a full virtual machine, you have a full computer on your computer, so it takes up a little bit of space, probably a few hundred megabytes. So you will have that still on your computer. The next time you want to use the project again, you can run Vagrant up again, and it will detect that you already have a virtual machine, and will just wake it up from its sleep. It will take 10 seconds to open this time. Vagrant destroy, when you're done using your project, and you probably don't need it right now, you can just run Vagrant destroy and completely delete everything, and you'll get your disk space back. People love disk space. The last thing is Vagrant SSH. You can actually log in to the server, to the virtual machine, just you will log into, I'm talking really fast, just like you will log into any server. So if you need to log in and like look at some Apache log files or tweak something, you can just log in and do it directly. You don't have to. It's not a big issue. You just do that. So let me do a demo of how I use the Vagrant. So first of all, you need to install a ton of software. You need to install Vagrant. You need to install Bergshelf. You need to install VirtualBox in this case, and then we need to install the two plugins. I'm using Vagrant Bergshelf to make Vagrant talk to Bergshelf, and I'm using another plugin called Vagrant Host Manager. What it does is it edits your local /etc/host file, allowing you to have a custom domain name for your site. So we usually use the syntax of my project name .local. So if I have a project about like cookie shop, I'll be able to type cookieshop.local in my browser and run the project there. This has two advantages. One, you can run multiple projects, and you have a separate domain name for each project. You have multiple virtual machines running. The other thing is you don't have to have that ugly like localhost :8824 or whatever you're using. It makes it very easy accessible to access the project. I know, for example, Facebook requires you to have a valid domain name in order to use their Facebook apps, and .local is a valid domain name, so you'll be able to do that. I don't think you do that localhost, I'm not sure, but stuff like that. I've done all the hard work, I hope, and a couple of weeks ago I finished up a full Vagrant Laravel stack which installs all this software. So what I did is I found all the appropriate cookbooks and made sure that we have a Vagrant file configured to run build with Laravel. So this project is on GitHub, so you can just go ahead and download it when you go home if you want to. But let me just quickly show how to use it. So first, I want to install a new blank installation of Laravel. So I'm just running this command that you usually will find in Laravel documentation to quickly set up your project. So let's just call it cookie shop. That sounded cool. So while it's doing that, we can take a look at the files I have here. I have two files. I have the Vagrant file and the Berks file. The other files doesn't matter. This is just a description of how to use it. So the Vagrant file. We just saw a minimal version of the Vagrant file on the screen. This is a much longer one, but it has the same syntax. Vagrant configure, and then you can then you have a config object where you can set all the properties you need. So just before we decide that we want to Ubuntu precise box, this should potentially work with other base images, like you want CentOS or Debian or something else, maybe in Windows. I haven't tried it yet. But since many of these cookbooks are designed to work on multiple platforms, it might as well work. Then synced folder, just sync it to /var/www/ and then I actually decide to have a name of the project here. Project name is a variable I define up here. Host manager. This one tells host manager to set up and tell your computer that you should point www.projectname.local to an IP address. So an IP address, where does this IP address come from? So you can define, when you have a virtual machine running a computer, you can define many types of networking. I use what's called a host-only or a private network, which basically means that you will have a private local network between your computer and your virtual machine. So your computer and your virtual machine will each have a IP address in a separate space, and you can actually specify the IP address you want. You can set it to anything you like, as long as it's in the private IP address space. So that'll be 172 something or 192.168.1.1, like kind of like a local network you have at home. So that was host manager. This is actually shell, like a bash provisioner. You have multiple provisioners, and actually before I run Chef, I just run a simple shell script that makes sure that Chef is installed on the server and is up to date. Because I had a problem with like the base image had Chef installed but an old version. So this is just making sure that we have the newest version of Chef and a newest version of Ruby, because Chef runs on Ruby. So this is the most interesting part. This is where we configure and tell Chef what to do. Let me just see if Laravel is installed. It's actually already installed over here. So before we continue, let me just check it out. It takes quite a while to run all this, so I just want to make sure that we don't have to sit here and wait for it. I just installed Laravel. Totally basic install of Laravel. This is all the files that Laravel created for me. Created a folder called Cookie Shop. So I want to run this website on my local machine. Let's see if we can do that. So all we need to do is download these two files, the Berks file. I want to put that in the directory we just created, Berks file, and the Vagrant file. You can also do this command line. I have an example of how to just type in some commands and do it. Like that. This is just for illustration purposes. So I guess Chrome decided to add .txt to these files. They should not have an extension at all. So I'm going to remove that. No extension at all. Alright. And the Vagrant file, Berks file is what we just looked at in the browser. So all I need to do now, just check. Oh, I need to go to the cookie shop directory. All I need to do now is run Vagrant up, because I already have a Berks file and I have a Vagrant file. So this is the process I just said takes around 15 minutes. I already have Precise 32, the image is already on my local computer, so I don't have to download it again. I can just use that. So what it does right now is it sets up the virtual machine, and Berkshell now downloads all the cookbooks we need. And let me just, before actually, to make sure we don't have anything running right now. We do. It's gonna not have anything running right now, so we don't have performance issues. It does take up a little bit of memory, it does take a little bit of CPU to run a machine like that, so just make sure to reset here. This is just VirtualBox running on my machine right now. So just gonna run Vagrant destroy so I can start over the process. When we run all this, I will make sure it actually works and I don't have to start over because it takes so long time to run. Alright, Vagrant up. So if we go back to the VirtualBox, we can actually see down here as it's starting. We could actually potentially open the virtual machine here and see everything happening. You can see a little small window is booting right now. You can see that it has like 284 megabytes of RAM and stuff like that. It's a full-blown computer, any computer. Wow. Alright, so right now, after it's done with Bergshell, now it configures the virtual machine, sets up the sync folder and all that stuff. It will ask for your root password or your administrator password for your computer. That's because it has to edit the host file and other files to the local machine that requires administrator access. Now I want to keep this running while I go through the rest of the Vagrant file. Alright. So, as I said, this is the fun part. This was the configuring chef part. So first we specify all the recipes that chef should run. So I said that cookbooks have recipes. So you can specify which recipe in which cookbook you want to run. If you don't specify a recipe, it will just use the default recipe. So this is all the cookbooks and recipes we're running. This colon syntax, I don't know if you can see it, I can zoom in a little bit. Hold a little bit. This colon syntax says in the Laravel cookbook I want the packages recipe. So it's pretty cool to install this software, but you want to configure it, as I said. So down here I have a ton of configuration. Usually a cookbook will have a lot of possibilities to configure it. So it uses this configuration when it generates the configuration files for the software. So this is fairly self-explaining, but in here you can specify what the name of the MySQL database you want to be created is called. Here we specify the domain name on what to set up for the Apache vhost. Again, I have this project name variable, so you can just change it up here. It will change the domain name, it will change the directories and everything. Hold on, there we go. So each cookbook usually have its own category of configuration. So the Apache cookbook, I can specify which Apache modules I want. For NPM, I specify what version of NPM I want. Same thing down here, I can configure Xdebug, PHP. Let's say you want the ImageMagick module. Let's see, we don't have that right now. You just add php5-ImageMagick and you'll have that as well. Beanstalk, MySQL, you can specify if you want different passwords here. PostgreSQL, you can zoom a little bit out. And this is for PostgreSQL. So you can just have fun editing stuff in this file and it will reflect everything else on the server. The only thing you need to remember is every time you change something in the Vagrant file, obviously it wouldn't reflect the server immediately. So what you can do is you can either destroy the box and create a new box, going Vagrant up again, delete everything and start over. But you can also just run a command called Vagrant provision, and it will run all the provisioners again and ensure that that all these settings have been applied. The way that Chef works and most of the other provisioners is if you run Vagrant provision and run provisioner again, it won't change anything unless it has to change something. So it won't touch your configuration files if it doesn't have to. It will automatically check for that. So yeah, this will take probably another 10 minutes, and then we will have cookieshop.local running Vagrant. So while this is running, do you guys have any questions? I might have skipped a little bit fast over some parts, like to how Vagrant works.
So I actually just went through this exercise. We had a developer start yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I put together a developer machine, and I had to start from a clean install of the OS and everything. So this was from scratch. But I went through and installed Homebrew and Git and like all these different things, with patching out. So if I'm understanding this correctly, then basically what you have to do is install Vagrant, VirtualBox, and like the 2, 3, 4 things. Like that.
Yeah.
And then,
virtual and then the plugins.
And basically, that would be it for your development environment. I mean, plus whatever text editor
Yeah.
you want to use. But then,
Can you give them the Vagrant setup, and
right? So then they would just basically edit their code locally, commit it to Git locally. But then to actually like run it and test it, they run it and test it with the server being the virtual machine.
Yeah, exactly. So what we do in all our projects is we just pop in a Vagrant file and a Berks file in each project. That means that anybody can go in and take one of our web projects, clone it, and run Vagrant up. And the beauty is we have, for example, have some projects using Node.js. What I do is I just add a Node.js Node.js cookbook to the run list, and of course add it to the Berks file as well. And then this specific virtual machine for the specific project will have Node.js as well. So yeah.
So then you don't have to install Node or any of those different things on your.
Yeah, it'll just work.
Do you have to pull the Git repository manually from the VM, or can you set it up to just do that automatically?
No, so since you're sharing the folder with the VM, the Git repository will just be on your local machine as usual.
Okay.
So if you have like a project folder or something where you clone all your repositories to, you just go into that directory and run Vagrant up. So all the files will still be on local machine. It will actually not be on the virtual machine.
Okay.
The only thing you will have in your virtual machine will be database content, for example. And if you have some kind of file uploads on the local machine, you'll have it there. So when you run Vagrant destroy and you free up this space because you don't have this running anymore, it's actually not a big deal. The only thing you lose is your database dump. And if you're using Vagrant, you'll probably, if you're using Laravel, you will probably use migrations and seeds anyways. So it will only take like a few minutes to restore some database structure and content.
So it's sharing files between the local machine and the VM.
Yes. I can show, when it's booted, I can show you how that works. Beauty is you can still use your favorite editor. You don't have to like use anything specific. You don't have to like, log into the server and use Vim or something if you're familiar with that. Like, I usually say to people, I helped a lot of people recently actually with installing, setting up a Vagrant environment. Vagrant is really annoying to set up. Like you have to install all the right software, and it takes a little bit of a while. Some of it takes a time to download and whatnot. But when you have anything running, it's a breeze. And I guess Ben started using Vagrant a couple of weeks ago. I guess. Do you? Are you okay with using Vagrant?
Well, there's an automated system online for setting up Vagrant. Do you know about this? This is.
Oh yeah, it's called.
I forget what it's called.
Is that Buxin? That's something else. Yeah, there's some website we can go to a website and say I want this version of PHP. I want to install MySQL. I want this, and this, and it will automatically generate a whole configuration for you, just like I did here for Laravel, but automatically do it. I think they use Puppet as Solutioner, which is fine. But
PH Puppet is.
Let me just, while we're waiting, check that out.
Yeah, PH Puppet, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So boxing is for generating.
How do you even say that?
Puppet.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's two things. There's Puppet, and there's Buxin. Buxin is a tool you can use to generate a base image for Vagrant. When you generate a base image, the install of the operating system has to have some specific configuration. It has to have a Vagrant user, and it has to have usually it has to have Chef and Puppet installed, so it easily can be provisioned. So I think Buxton is a really good piece of software to generate base image. There's also a website called Vagrant Boxes. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, it's called vagrantbox.es. It's a huge list of different Vagrant boxes. If you want a specific operating system, you can just go in here and copy this URL. So you can either, so for example, at some point I needed CentOS, a specific version, and none of these like really worked. So I had to generate one myself, and I think I used Buxton to like automatically do that. It was pretty straightforward. Yeah.
So with us, we use VMware Fusion.
Yeah.
Mostly what we use it for is to run Windows, so that we can test our apps on IE, of course. But so with this, you'd have to run two virtual. Like one onto your server, and then you have to run another one for Windows.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. So I haven't used PHP Puppet. I don't know. Whatever.
I have no idea.
Puppet?
I just think because you were saying it's so hard to to set up, but
this is great if you want to do something custom. I will assume I haven't used it yet, but this allows you to check off what you need, what kind of software you need, and it'll set everything up. So take a look at that, definitely, when you look into different options. Yeah, let's see how it goes over here. So it's installing a ton of stuff here. I think it's configuring PHP right now. Enable some Apache mods.
It only takes a few seconds to boot up the virtual machine.
Yeah, so next time it just takes a few seconds. But so the thing about Vagrant destroying everything, I usually keep a Vagrant box on the machine for projects we're working on right now. If I know I'm going to work on it within the next week or two, probably, I'll definitely keep the box on a machine. But if I know that we probably won't need to touch this project for the next couple of weeks or a longer time, just Vagrant destroy, delete from my machine, and next time I just need to spend those 15 minutes setting it up. But it's 15 minutes of looking at the screen or doing something else in between. You don't have to you just have to wait.
Where does it live on your hard drive? Where does it store the virtual?
I believe that's a folder, a new home folder called like .vagrant, where it puts all your virtual machines.
Okay.
Actually, while we're waiting, it'll be fun to see. .vagrant.d. Okay. Boxes. Maybe actually VirtualBox has its own folder for it.
I think it puts it in virtual machines folder.
Okay, let's see. VirtualBox VMs. Yep, there we go. So let's just take. So this box we're building right now is 2.2 gigabytes. So it can be a little bit heavy. Some people also just have one virtual machine for all their projects. If you work with a lot of projects that have the same specifications, that's fine. I prefer to have a server for each project, but it's up to you. Well, yeah, you can use the exact same Chef configuration to launch a server. This is great for launching staging or maybe even production servers, because you'll have the exact same configuration. See, the only problem you'll face when you are launching a server using the same configuration is the base image from Vagrant won't work with a cloud hosted provider. You can't use the same image usually. So, for example, Amazon EC2 has a lot of base operating system images, and you can just use one of those. If you want to have like the exact same environment, you will want to generate a Vagrant image and generate an EC2 image at the same time. So EC2 needs like an EC2 user, a Vagrant user, a Vagrant user, so there's a little bit difference there. But apart from that, you can use the same version of the rating system, same version of stuff, if you really want it like one-to-one. So yeah. Oh, it's done! Yay! So I just need to see Laravel. I need to give full permissions for the storage folder. So the web server has full write permission there. So I'm just going to do that, just Laravel thing. And now I can open my browser and go to, what's the cookie shop, the local? Whoop. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes the Vagrant host manager doesn't update your host file correctly. Sometimes it thinks it's there, but it's not. So you can force Vagrant host manager by running Vagrant host manager. Let's hope that was the issue. This will force an update of your host file. Updating EC host and ask me for my password. All right.
Yeah, it's easy.
Let's see if SSH machine, if that at least works. It does. And the IP address of the machine is over here. Does the static one really defined? Okay, so there's something wrong with the host file right now. This is a lot of software working together. Things will go wrong, especially if it's the first time I set it up. But usually when it's running, it's running. So luckily, but it seems like it works. So let's just really quick try to edit the file. I'm just gonna open my editor and put the browser next to it. So let's try to open this particular directory. So again, this is a totally vanilla Laravel installation. I haven't done anything. So let's just try to create a route for the front page. Actually, we can just update the hello view. Whoop. Okay, permission error. I'm just going to update the app storage folder again. But basically, I edit the file look on my machine, and it'll just work directly in the browser. So yeah, it's still a fairly new thing. That's also why you'll probably face issues like this. For example, right now we had a permissions issue. Even though I just changed the permissions on the storage folder, it didn't work. It might be something I screwed up. It might also be a bug somewhere. I don't know. But it's super convenient because now I have Memcache, I have Redis, I have my SQL, I have everything installed, and I can even connect to the server using my SQL client on my computer. I just need to connect to this particular IP address.